Hello, 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 everyone. Selena here from HypnoBiz New York, and thank you for joining me. And each week, we're bringing you top experts from around the world to share their business tips and strategies so that you can learn to grow your practice. And today, I am so excited because we have the famous Glenn Harrold today. Woohoo! Thank you so much for joining me today, Glenn. This is such a treat to interview you. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Selena. I'm very much looking forward to it.
So for those of you that are watching that may not know who Glenn Harrold is, let everybody know a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Okay, well, I've been a hypnotherapist for 20 years now. And before that, I was a musician. I used to play in bars and clubs and that kind of thing. And it was one day watching somebody do stage hypnosis. I shared the bill with them that kind of sparked my interest in hypnosis. And, from there, that was kind of the epiphany. But I didn't want to do the stage thing. I wasn't drawn to that. I didn't want to make people dance around like a chicken and do the outrageous stuff. So it was always about the healing for me. And from there, I did a 2-year diploma in London with the British School of Clinical Hypnosis. Loved it, took to it like a duck to water. And then because I'd been a musician in the past, I'd always retained like a little studio in my house. And so from there, I started making recordings. Yeah, and this was like, what are we now, 2018, so 20 odd years ago, maybe just over that now. And, they were very much homemade recordings when I first did them, but I was really passionate about what I was doing. And because I was, I'd become this therapist and I really enjoyed helping other people, I kind of infused the recordings with that passion for healing. And, slowly and surely they worked for people. I used to drive around to local stores and deliver them into stores on sale or return, £5 a go. And it was very organic, the whole startup. I didn't have any marketing plan. I just used to deliver them into local shops. And little by little, they started to take off. And it was a gradual process. But the whole thing really snowballed. And, and it's kind of it was my niche. Making recordings has always been my niche. And, it's been a wonderful journey. I've loved every second.
Well, you do have a great voice for it, I must say.
The voice is always important. You've got to, when I first started, I used to get a lot of comments on Amazon and reviews that said, oh, he sounds a little bit like a builder, or he sounds like he's off EastEnders, because I was born in London and I have got a little bit of a London accent, and it was probably stronger back then because, I've kind of toned it down a little bit as time's gone on. So I've always listened to the feedback that's come in and, adapted the recordings and developed them over time. So my Dick Van Dyke impressions disappeared now and I speak, the Queen's English.
Did you do like formal training in like hypnotherapy? Did you used to see clients often, or you felt like you wanted to go straight into recordings?
No, I did a lot of training. I did a 2-year diploma with the British School of Clinical Hypnosis. And back when I trained in the mid-90s, they were the biggest school in the UK. And I kind of figured at the time I wanted to be really with a good school and have a really good training, because I knew that would stand me in good stead long term. So yeah, the British School of Clinical Hypnosis, 2-year diploma. And then, the practice I built, it was slow at first because, the internet was kind of in its infancy. So, we didn't really use the internet back then so much. So it was really, I used to put cards into local shop windows, new hypnotherapist in town. And one of the first things I ever did, because, as you probably know, when you very first start, nobody knows who you are. You might be the best hypnotherapist in the world, but people don't know you. So I was really hungry. I was passionate about the subject and I loved the idea of helping other people and healing. And one of the first clients I ever saw was, it was from an advert that I'd done in a local paper. I started at this new clinic down in a place called Sheerness, which is sort of 20 miles from where I lived. And it's a little island, this place. You have to go across a bridge to get onto it. It's quite unique in the sort of southern England. And so I'd phoned up the local paper and said, look, could I do an interview? I've just started a new clinic down here, because it was dead as a dodo. So I needed to get it going. So I've got the local paper on board, and the interviewer came round, and she was very skeptical about hypnosis. And she wouldn't look me in the eye when she was interviewing me, because she thought I was going to do something. And I'd only just come out of college, so I was very inexperienced. And I thought, oh, it's going to be a funny interview. It's not going to go well. But as it happened, the piece came out in the paper, and it was a really positive piece. And I was there standing in front of this big bookcase. I had a little goatee beard at the time, because I thought that's what you need as a hypnotherapist. I had these books behind me, I had a suit on, and it was a very powerful picture. And the camera actually caught me staring into the lens with these cat's eyes. And the headline said, "Hypnotist comes to Sheerness." And it was such a powerful article. And I was inundated from it, because, it just caught the sort of zeitgeist, and it was there, and people were intrigued. This new hypnotherapist looked so powerful, and everyone wanted to see me. So I kind of got very lucky, and I saw lots and lots of clients. But also it taught me that article taught me that, everybody that came to see me was really primed through seeing that article, because they were ready to respond to the hypnosis as soon as they came along. And literally the third client that I saw from that was this big Scottish fella who wanted to stop smoking. And he was very nervous about being hypnotized. And when he came to see me, he sat down, and, one of the first things you do is build rapport, because if you build good rapport, they trust you and they respond to you. So he sat down and he said, well, I'm very nervous about being hypnotized. He said, but I've got to stop smoking. He said, I promised my wife, I'm going to stop. So I just chatted away to him, and I was talking to him about football, because he had an interest in football. So I was building a rapport with him. And all of a sudden he locked his eyes on mine, and he said, "You're doing it to me now." And he was swaying. And he'd gone into the deepest trance I've ever put anyone into. And I hadn't even started. So he'd gone into auto hypnosis just through having seen the article, and kind of got it in his head I was this powerful hypnotherapist. And it was, really good example of how to set up a session, how important it is to set it up right, because people respond very well if they believe the environment's right and they feel safe. And so I learned a lot. I learned a lot very quickly. And I just had a passion and a love for doing it. And I literally, over the next 5 years, before I started making recordings, I probably saw about 2,000 people.
Wow.
I was seeing 25 clients a week at one point. And, it was hard work, but I was so, up until that point, I'd always been flat broke. I'd played my guitar in pubs and bars and clubs, and I'd been in bands when I was younger, but we'd never kind of made it. We'd had a little taste of fame, but we'd never taken off. So I was always broke. So when that came along and I saw that I could make a decent living at it, and I also had the passion for it, I really threw myself into it, and I loved it. And that was it. And then I got to a point, where I thought, maybe I could record some of these sessions and then give them to clients. And so I had a little basic recording machine. I had a microphone, a DAT machine, and a little reverb unit. And I started to make recordings at home. And then from there, I started to take them into local shops. And there was nobody doing hypnosis recordings back in that time. I was really the first one in the UK to make dedicated hypnosis recordings. There were like sort of meditation and relaxation recordings, but they were kind of coming over from the US at the time. So I made these recordings, these homemade recordings, and taken them into local stores. And it was all very amateur to start with. It wasn't a very professional setup. I had homemade displays that I'd leave into stores. And so at that point, I went to my bank and I borrowed £1,000 to get some nice display stands made. And so I got I put all the money into these display stands. They look good. I'd put 12 cassettes in these little displays, took them into shops, and they started to sell much better. And within 3 years, I turned over like $500,000 3 years later, and I had 5 staff working for me. And
Wow.
my PA at the time, because the whole thing kind of took off, it just snowballed, and I got them into Waterstones, the big chain stores in the UK, and suddenly they were selling everywhere. There was a big market for it, and I was kind of first in the door, if you like. And my PA said to me, she said, "What's this £36 that's coming out of our account every month?" And I said, "Oh, that's the £1,000 I borrowed a couple of years ago to pay for the first stands." And I was still paying that loan back by the time it had all kind of taken off.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
it was just a fantastic journey, and it had so much momentum to it, and it just carried on and on. And it's still got that momentum to this day. I live in the south of Spain now. I've moved out here, and I love this place. It's magical, and the recordings now are obviously on the App Store and all over the world, and selling in great numbers, and it's just such a fantastic journey.
It's quite amazing, your journey. How you started in your band doing
Yeah.
hypnotherapy to now becoming like the number one, recording artist for hypnotherapy material. It's amazing. You must pinch yourself sometimes to see your journey from where you started to where you are now.
It is really something else when I think about it, because going back before my musical days, I was a bit of a street kid. I grew up in a very dysfunctional household, and I used to run away from home when I was 12. And it's kind of a classic story. I fell in with a bad crowd. I used to get, I was into drugs, I was into drink, and I got kicked out of school when I was 15. So I got no qualifications. And life wasn't very optimistic. When I went out into the adult world, I didn't set it on fire at first. But it's kind of, coming from that background, I was looking to fix the dysfunction in me. I knew that to make any progress in life, I had to fix what was wrong. And I had a mountain of negative conditioning that came from my childhood. I mean, I was kicked out of school at 15, and the headmaster said I was the worst kid he'd had in the school for 10 years. And, I was literally, in those days, a lot of my friends were in and out of prison, and, went on to have criminal careers. And so I had a lot to fix. But I knew I wanted to do good in the world, but I just didn't know how. I had all this problem, all this conditioning going on. So it was when I saw that stage hypnotist working that I really saw something there that could, I recognized that could fix a lot of the negative conditioning that I had within me. And that was kind of why I had such a passion for it. Because for the first time, I realized that if I changed what was in me, the external world would respond differently. And, sure enough, it didn't happen overnight. I didn't suddenly bang, a bit of self-hypnosis and everything took off. It was a slow process because I had a lot to clear. But over time, I worked on myself a lot. I did a lot of self-hypnosis, a lot of other therapies. I did kinesiology. I did a number of ayahuasca ceremonies later on, stuff that really clears you on a deep level. And I still continue that because I've never met anyone on this planet that's the real deal, that's worked out. We're all a work in progress. Mm-hmm. And even now, life is wonderful and abundant and I'm happy, but I'm still a work in progress. I've still got things I want to fix and I want to move on to another level. So that's the journey. And that's the one I recognize for everyone. And I really love helping people that are stuck to move on, because whatever addiction, whatever thing they've got going on, the chances are I understand it, because more often than not, I was there. I had that when I was a youngster. So it's such a blessing to have come through all that, have the real world experience, and to have that in my tool bag when I'm helping other people.
I think it is truly amazing that you had the wherewithal and the fortitude to recognize that, hey, for the world to change, I need to change. I need to go within myself to make the change. The people out there, outside circumstances, external things are not going to make my life better. I have to go within to help myself to be the best person that I can be. So what great fortitude you had at such, at that young age. So that's great.
Yeah, it took me a while to kind of figure that, because for a long time you just think, especially if you're running on negative conditioning, because I was told I was no good for so long in my childhood that I really believed that. And, the one sort of little light in my younger life was that I joined a band when I was 17. I was into the punk scene back in the UK. And I joined a band when I was 16, 17. And within 3 years, we had a fantastic singer. He was a real talent. And I was the bass player, his best mate. And we won a national pop competition because we entered it. And it was like the X Factor of its day. And we went all the way through and we won. We played in London to like 7,000 people. It was live on the BBC. And it was like a big deal at the time. And suddenly I had this little taste of fame and fortune. But it was kind of, I wasn't the main talent. I was played my part in the band, but we did have an energy as a band that took us to this point. And we had our 15 minutes of fame, as Andy Warhol said. And so that was kind of the little light. But even with that, even when I had that taste of success, I was still very, very insecure. And I do interviews back then with the band, and I wouldn't actually be able to speak. All the other guys in the band would be able to speak, but I was just tongue-tied because I was tormented with this anxiety and this lack of belief. And they'd sort of laugh at me when we came out the studio because I'd just say hello and goodbye. And that was kind of all I was capable of saying at the time. So it was kind of a very gradual process through, I just thought I was no good. I thought I was not confident and I wasn't, all those things, but I didn't really make the connection between my childhood, because when you have a bad childhood, you don't always know. It just seems normal to you. A lot of people who go through crazy things, they just say, well, it's normal. I didn't know any different. But it was only later on that I understood the workings of the mind and the unconscious, and the iceberg analogy, where we've got the greater part of our unconscious mind is below the surface. And that's the part that you can program to change patterns of behavior. And when I really understood that, that was the epiphany for me. That was where the transformation began. And it really took off from that point, and life started. It was like BC and AC, it really was.
Oh, what an amazing story. What a journey, transformation. It's like the caterpillar into the butterfly. Now look at this beautiful butterfly right now.
Yeah. Well, it always feels gradual when you go through it, a transformation like that. It's a gradual thing, but when I stop and I look back, and and some of my old friends that I used to knock around with on the street have got in touch with me, and they, a couple of them have been inside for long periods, robbing banks and stuff like that.
Wow.
I think, wow, I'm a long, long way away from that life I led back then.
You were definitely guided by some higher power to say, you can do more, you can be more, you're capable of more, turn this way, right?
I had some lucky star that was shining, that kept me away, kept me out of the big trouble. But I think I would have never been a good crook. I was like, I could never tell fibs. Whenever I told a lie, it was all written over my face. So crime was never going to work out for me.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Also, I want to say thank you for all of those that are watching. If you're enjoying this interview with Glenn Harrold, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, share this video on your page or any groups that you're in, and also let us know where you're watching from. I'm always curious to find out where people are tuning in. And look, Victoria says hello. She says hi.
I was just saying that I saw your interview, and that's kind of how I connected with Selena.
Yeah. Hi, Victoria. We love you. Hi. Okay. All right.
Is there a way for me to share it on Facebook? Is there a button I need to click, or?
Oh, no. You can respond to her after as well.
Right. No, I was just thinking, is there a way I can generate to my following to tune in?
Oh, yeah. I sent you the link, but maybe you didn't see that in the messenger. Do you see the link that I sent in your messenger?
Does it say join this broadcast? Is that the one?
No, the other one. It said to share it with your people.
Okay.
You'll see it. That way you can share it on your pages or your groups so they can watch it live as well.
Okay. Can I do that later, or is it just for
Yeah.
now?
Well, they'll see the replay. They won't see it live. If you paste it now, they'll do it live.
Okay, gotcha. I've got it. Let me do that right now.
Okay, yeah. That way your fans
Okay.
can
Can I
see
do
it.
that later, or
So, and if guys, again, if you're enjoying this video, I know
hang
I
on.
said that I'm going to
Sorry.
be bringing you weekly videos of interviews of people that have really done great things in their business, so that way they can teach you their business skills and their process, so that way you can grow your business. But I'm enjoying this so much, I may do this daily. So that way we're all thriving. And trust me when I tell you, Glenn is thriving. I bought his audios probably over 10 years ago on Audible, but I never equated the face with the voice until now that we are connected. So this world is truly miraculous, how you can connect with people that have influenced you and influence your life in a positive way. So again, I still have his recordings on my Audible. I listen to them and they are terrific. So I highly recommend checking out his audios as well. Oh, and Victoria says she loves us both. Oh, Victoria, we love Victoria. And Victoria is actually going to be speaking at my convention in New York City, HypnoBiz New York, where she will teach you her top tips and strategies, how she grew her business. And her and Glenn, they're friends, which is great. There's always a 6 degree of separation here. So I'm so happy. All the
It's
wonderful.
all divinely synchronized, isn't it? It's all meant to be.
Yes. Oh, yes, Victoria. I thought that for you, doing this daily, the daily hypnosis show. This is true. I love it so much. I love learning from other people, especially what they did in their business to grow and become successful. I truly believe that sharing is caring, and whatever they can impart their knowledge with us and myself, this world will be a better place, because we'll be affecting much more people in the world with our tools and techniques and stuff. So the more sharing is caring. So I love these interviews, and if you're enjoying them, please tune in daily, because now I think I'm going to do it daily instead of weekly.
Selena,
Okay.
sorry to stop mid-flow. If I click on the link, it opens, but it's out of sync with us. So do I just click it?
No, you just copy and paste the link that says for your fans and followers.
Sorry, I'm with you.
And paste it.
Let's do that right now, and then I'll hopefully get a few more people tuning
Yeah.
in.
Also, if for those of you that are watching who have Glenn's audios, let us know. Write in the screen. Let him know how much you appreciate him, and appreciate him recording his hypnosis recordings for you. I mean, it's a lot of work. So the fact that he takes his time to do hundreds and hundreds of audios, that means he cares about you. He cares about spreading the message on the planet, so that we're all living our best life. So let us know your experience with the Glenn Harrold audios as well. Okay. All right, Glenn, are you back?
I'm back. Yeah, sorry about that. I was just
that's
keeping
okay.
up with the technology and figuring out the way to post it. But yeah, I think I've done that now. So good.
Great. Post it in all your pages and all your groups, so that way all your fans can watch it live as well. And
Yeah.
Victoria says she's been listening to Glenn forever. One of her favorite hypnosis voices.
That's a big compliment. When it's another hypnotherapist, that's lovely. That really means a lot, because it's a real endorsement, isn't it? If it's a musician or a hypnotherapist, I love that.
Yes, and Victoria is great. She has a library of recordings too. I found out about Victoria over a decade ago, and I love her and adore her. And now we're loving on you, Glenn. You see, it's like one big love fest in the hypnotherapy world.
Just spreading the love, aren't we, between us all? It's perfect.
Well, you have the perfect sign in the back. I'm going to have to borrow that sign, Glenn.
This is it. It's like resonating through the computer and around all of us. It's just perfect.
True. All you need is love, love, love.
That's John Lennon nailed it, didn't he? When he sung that song, to the whole world back then. That was just the most perfect sentiment, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was onto something. I truly believe that. I think love is one of our greatest emotions, and we can do so much on the planet with love. It's so powerful. So I love that you have that. When I saw it, when we started the interview, I was like,
It's so simple. It's so simple, isn't it? And I always use a little technique that I learned years ago, and it's such a simple one that I use it if I've got meetings or I've got something to go into where I'm, might be a bit nervous or whatever. And if you just imagine the person that you're going to see or you're going to meet, and you project a feeling of love towards them, and you make no judgment on how they look, or no mental conditioning judgment or anything like that. You just see them as another soul. We're all souls on the journey, aren't we? We're all on this path through this crazy life. And if you just imagine them as another soul and project a feeling of love from your heart, and you do that, and it changes the dynamic of the way that you interact with that person. And I use that, whenever I've got a meeting or whatever, and it's such a nice way to communicate. And it also, takes away any sort of preconceived ideas, because you're communicating with another soul, and that's all it is. We're just all souls on this planet making our way through, and some are struggling more than others, and it's just a journey, isn't it? The whole life thing is crazy, up and down like a roller coaster. Yeah. I love it. You just got to learn to ride it, haven't you?
It's so true. It's a journey. I would see that when I was younger. I would say life is a journey, not a destination. And then when you become an adult, you really understand that.
Yeah. Because it is so colorful, and there's so many things, in this day and age, especially, we live in a world where, there's an amazing amount of opportunities. I think of my granddad. He worked in a factory in London for 50 years on such a low wage, he couldn't afford to buy a house. And then at the end of it, they gave him a crappy watch, and that was his lot. He never had any other opportunities than that. And that was like 2 generations ago. You think now we're living through this digital revolution that's just incredible. The opportunities we've got, but all of those opportunities and decisions that we make come with more stress and more pressure. So it's fantastic on one hand, but we have to balance our lives and try to, enjoy the ride and accept that, there are more pressures and more stresses, and we do make a lot more decisions. It said we make more decisions in a week than our grandparents made in a year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, making the most of life and enjoying it, and, doing the things you love, and living in the place you love. 25, 30 years ago, I lived in a tower block in a rough part of London, mixing with some very colorful characters. And, so now I look out, and from when I look out on the terrace here, I can see the sea in southern Spain, and it's beautiful. It's really amazing. And I've been on that whole journey, and I know what it's all about. And so I appreciate everything I've got now, and how life is. How wonderful it is.
You really start to appreciate it when you look at your journey and say, I've come really far. So let me ask you, Glenn, who were your mentors when you first started out, or, along the way as you were building up your career? Was it someone you could, look to, or kind of guide you in the right direction, whether friends of yours or from books? Who were your mentors on this journey?
I think back in the sort of mid-90s, when I got into healing, and because I kind of got into healing before I started with hypnotherapy. I met my wife at the time. We were both sort of opening up on a sort of spiritual level, and it was at the time I was driving a mini cab around the West End in London, and I kept picking up customers that were talking about spirituality, and for the first time in my life, it sort of intrigued me, and I kind of started to open up from there, and I started to meet lots of people. And so I went on this kind of spiritual awakening, and, I bought a few books, and one of the books I bought was Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life, which is, most people started with that book. It was such a transformative book. And also Stuart Wilde back in the day. He was a very kind of a little bit of an outrageous guy. He was grown up in London, and he was a bit of a character, and a bit wild as well, but very knowledgeable. He had a lot of spiritual knowledge. So his kind of wild, crazy streak sort of appealed to me. But also I was, he knew a lot of stuff because he spent time in, Asia and places like that. And he was very knowledgeable. And so his books, I found them really effective. And then later on, Eckhart Tolle, he was a big influence, The Power of Now. And I actually met Eckhart a few years ago out in Malibu, because we shared the same app developer. And I met him backstage at one of his talks, and he was a lovely guy, very authentic. He was as authentic as they come, really had no sort of airs and graces about him, very as you'd expect him to be. And we chatted, and he'd actually slept on park benches in London when he was younger because he'd hit rock bottom, and it was how he said he got into the power of now, because he was on a park bench in London and he started to observe life, and he was just there, sitting there and taking it all in. And the seeds of the power of now came from that moment. So we were sharing stories about how we slept on park benches and slept rough, because I did that when I was a kid. And so he was an influence. And just over time, I've met some really great people, great teachers. A few years ago, I spent 4 months down in Panama at a shamanic retreat, and that was quite amazing, because it was like a third world country, and we were kind of living very much in nature, and waking up every day and doing ceremonies and sort of blessings to the mountains, and working with nature spirits, animal spirits. And I had a lot of clearing at that time. The shaman would be helping us to clear up from our luminous energy field and clear blocks and things like that. And it was a really powerful 4 months. And I remember with my partner, Nicola, we flew back to the UK after spending this time in the jungle in Panama. And we flew back to London, and as soon as you get into sort of London, you kind of, the density of it hits you, because it's such a, it's such a densely populated place, and it's always cloudy when you fly back into London. And you get on the M25 and the road's always jammed and people are sort of strung out and stressed. And it was such a contrast to where we'd been. And it kind of hit me, it really hit me, because my vibration at that time was quite rarefied, because we spent this time in the jungle eating really lean and meditating every day. And it took me a good couple of weeks to get back into normal life and just sort of interacting with friends and family again. And because that's life in the sort of real world that we live in. It's like that, and it does, if you do want to immerse yourself in the spiritual world, you can go off to those retreats and, spend time there and get really clear and clean. But it's kind of out of sync with your normal life, because the energy vibration is so different. And that really struck me at that time. And, I kind of tried to walk a balance between the two now, I guess. And, because I love that, the spiritual journey is something that is just ongoing for all of us. We're all on the path, whether we realize it or not. And I think, the goal of this life is to clear our karma, clear our shadow, raise our consciousness, and, spread love and light, really. It's that simple. It's that simple, but our ego often gets in the way and slows us down and takes us off on the wrong path at times. So, that's the great challenge of this life. And I think, was it Oscar Wilde said that I can resist anything except temptation?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. There's plenty of temptation in this world, especially in this day and age, where we've got so many opportunities and things going on. So it's just a journey. Journey. Bill Hicks said it, didn't he? And he's that great sort of little monologue he did in one of his stand-up shows. It's a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. It's just a roller coaster, up and down. And we ride it as best we can. And he said it far better than I ever could. But it's just a great little clip.
Mm-hmm. It's so it's amazing that sometimes our adversity leads to our strength. How you were saying Eckhart Tolle was on the park bench, you were on the park bench, but sometimes when we are in that rock bottom place, it's like the only place else to go is up. And that's when we start reevaluating our lives, and we go within, we say, I know there's something better for me. Maybe if I just pause, right, and observe my surroundings, go within, there can be a better life for me. So I've met so many people who, in their greatest despair, found their greatest joy, where they said, I choose to live a different life now. So I find it to be so amazing how we come to that realization in those moments.
It does. When you hit rock bottom in life, it kind of forces you to really look deeper. you have to, because there's nothing else. I've been in places where, some very, very dark places in my younger life. And it forced me to look really deep and to educate myself more. Because as I said, I was kicked out of school at 15, and I was just very, I wasn't illiterate, but I wasn't very knowledgeable back then. So when I really hit rock bottom and I was on the floor, I realized I had to get my act together, and I had to start to change my life. And it forced me to look very deep. And that was a big turning point for me. And when you do that, you pause, you stop, and you start to evaluate everything around you, and you start to, think, what is it? Why am I stuck? Why am I in this difficult situation? And you start to naturally then explore the unconscious mind a bit more. Because we spend so much in our conscious mind, so much time in there, and the monkey mind's always driving us, isn't it? It's always nagging away, telling us to do this and that. But the real power and resource we've got is inside of us. The creativity, the genius we've got, and everyone's got that. We've all got this amazing resource within us, and we've got superhuman strength when we tap into it. There's this well documented where, a kid will get trapped under a car, and the mother will be able to walk up to the car, pick it up, and pull the kid out, because at no point does she stop and say, I can't do that. It weighs half a ton. We're blessed with this incredible ability when we, focus our minds, and when we draw upon that inner strength. And, you do that through, self-hypnosis, through meditation, through spending time in that. And for me, as I said, when I learned about hypnosis and I studied hypnotherapy and learned the self-hypnosis technique and the law of attraction a bit later on, I would lay down every day for like 45, 50 minutes, and I would use self-hypnosis to go into a deep trance, and I project out these goals, these affirmations for abundance and success in my life. And like I said to you earlier, at that point I was flat broke. I had nothing at all, but I was so determined to make something of my life that I would really go into this very deeply and, project. And I really got into the art of it, and I always say, if you want to build a great physique, you work out 4 times a week. And the mind's the same. If you're programming it really with, regularly with great affirmations and beliefs, things will start to change, and you'll start to, meet the right people at the right time, and opportunities will start to fall into your lap. Mm-hmm. And so I did this, regularly. Every day I was doing it. I had affirmation cards all over the place. And when I was doing my delivery jobs, I'd be, going into these mantras, I'm always in the right place at the right time. Abundance comes freely and naturally to me. I'd say it over and over again, for hours on end. And sure enough, over time, these things started to fall into place, and I did start to meet the right people, and I did start to become more abundant. And I got lucky. I got into Audible when it just started up. Audible was an early MP3 download platform, and I kind of just got on there when it started. So I was the first, hypnotherapist on there making meditations recording. And my sales went through the roof, because they created a platform that was ripe for the time. Mm-hmm. So I was on this platform that was happening, and sales were like, in the millions within a few years. So I was lucky, and that happened to me over and over again. I made apps quite early on, and they, apps have had 8 million downloads on the App Store. And, it's just been lucky. Right people have come along to me and helped me to do these things. But because I was meditating on that and using the law of attraction, I was resonating with these thoughts and feelings and beliefs. Mm-hmm. And the external world reflected that back to me. So I realized after a while that your circumstances and a lot of things that happen are not just luck. It's about you changing your inner reality so that the outside world is in sync with that. And that was a massive transformation, because when I was younger, I kept thinking, why am I so unlucky? Why do these bad things keep happening to me? And, the reality was I was, on a different vibrational energy at the time, a different track, and I was attracting all kinds of scallywags towards me.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Like you said, the mind probably was all over the place, especially when you're struggling, you're in scarcity mindset. But once you started to change the conversation in your mind with the affirmations, with the visualizations, your outside world reflected that. So let me ask you, Glenn, when you were just, beginning this journey to train your mind to focus again on abundance, health, and well-being, how many hours a day were you visualizing or meditating? Or was it, in the morning and at night? Like, what was your routine to do that?
It was very, very often. I was so sick of failure and struggle at that point. I was just, I'd had, some really, really tough times, very dark times. And I was sick of that failure. Even relationships were very fleeting. They didn't last. I couldn't hold down a relationship even. And I just couldn't, I didn't know what was wrong. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't really know what it was. But it was just all my negative childhood conditioning was, continuing to run in the background. It was like a computer program that was ticking over and sabotaging everything I tried to do. So when I got to that point where I found self-hypnosis and the law of attraction, I was so hungry for success, or to, just not even so much big success, because I never thought I'd be doing a lot of the things I've done. It was more about wanting to change, and move out of the place I was in, just to live in a nice area and have a nice car, or something half decent. I was so hungry for all of that I took to it like a duck to water, and I'd immerse myself in it. And I did at the beginning. I was literally meditating for an hour a day, every single day. And I was doing affirmations for hours on end. And really, when I think about it, things did change pretty quickly. That story where I, went to the bank and borrowed £1,000, and then we were turning over 500,000 before I paid the loan back. That was true. And it happened quite quickly. So it was because of the energy, the amount of energy I put into it was so much that it did. My external world changed quite dramatically. And I continue. I don't meditate like I used to as much as that. I do still drop into that, but it might be once a week. I mean, I've got 2 young kiddies now, they're 3 and 1. And that's like, that's my pretty much the full-time job in itself.
Yes.
But I love the journey. It's stressful and it's hard work at times, but they're such amazing little souls, and I love guiding them and nurturing them. And I'm at an age where I can do that and give them so much, offer them so much. And I love that. I love it, and so I think every stage of your life is so precious and so amazing. And I don't have the time to meditate like I used to. And, I'm not, with my career, I'm just kind of riding it and enjoying it, but I don't chase big things. I just enjoying the journey where I'm at now. But all of the work that I did back then, all the meditating and the abundance work, it kind of had a momentum to it that kind of carried me on. And I've still been riding that wave ever since. And it feels like that because people come to me with these offers and things like that. And it's just effortless, really. Mm-hmm. The programming's completely different. That's the key.
Yeah. And I think what happens is, because you were meditating, like you said, you were doing the affirmations. If I'm sure in the beginning, it was like, okay, do I really believe I'm going to be successful or wealthy? But I think after a while, it reaches a critical point where your subconscious now believes it, and this is your reality. So this is probably why you don't need to meditate as much anymore, because now it's your state of mind. It's your state of being. It's natural to you. It's like breathing to have this abundant energy. Yes?
Yeah, exactly that. And it's so chalk and cheese to how I was back then, because when you've got the failure programming going on, it's the exact opposite. You almost expect bad things to happen in life. And, so you go through life with this trepidation and thinking, and then when something bad does happen, yeah, sure enough, I knew it would happen to me, and it's that kind of thing. So, when you change the internal dialogue through self-hypnosis, through clearing away the negative conditioning and, clearing your shadow as well. That was an important part later on, the sort of, it's in shamanic terms, they call it the luminous energy field. We've got these blockages and things in our energetic field, and so clearing those, that's a whole nother level. to the clearing process. But you do, once you get lighter, you start to become the person that you're supposed to be. And I feel that now, I feel that I am the person that I'm supposed to be, and I react in the world the way that I'm supposed to. But for so long of my younger life, I didn't. I had this very, sort of adrenalized, crazy energy that would do crazy things and mad things. And sometimes I didn't know why I did them, got me into trouble. And I couldn't figure it. I was always in trouble, when I was younger. And it was just that conditioning that was going on inside me. But I never ever met a bad kid who didn't grow up in a bad environment. We're all a product of our environment and what's going on with us. But yes, with as you said, absolutely spot on. Now it feels normal and natural to be lucky and to get breaks and for people to say nice things. That feels natural to me, and it's nice. And I feel, it's just a normal state of being, and it's nothing anyone should ever feel guilty about, because the world is abundant and we should be abundant. Yes. But it's often our programming and our conditioning that stops us from achieving that. Yeah. And there's the old thing, isn't there? Often people, I always remember when I first started with the meditating, and I put affirmations out there that I'm going to earn X amount a month. And your monkey mind's going, well, how are you ever going to earn that? You've never earned more than £1,000 in your life. How are you going to earn that money? So you have to clear that away, that negative conditioning, that chatter. Yeah. And that was the thing, and it took a while to get rid of that sort of, but I see it in a lot of other people. I see people who are stuck and they've got the same conditioning. So I know that I can guide them out of it. And if they're willing, if they've got the sort of hunger and the desire, you can lead them out of the woods and show them, look, you don't have to, this is just conditioning. It's somebody else gave it to you, or you picked it up, and that's it. We can transform our lives when you have the tools, when you have, the kind of armory to do that. And that's the beauty of this life,
Yeah, it's now you're vibrating at a higher level.
I guess so. It's nice living here in southern Spain because I feel very comfortable here. I kind of got to a point back in the UK, and I love the UK, all my family and friends there, but I felt out of alignment with where I lived. I'd wake up and, some days it could be a struggle, the weather, always grey, cloudy skies. And, you find people who live in the Northern Hemisphere tend to be very stoic and tough. You go up to Scotland and they are a tough race. They're a tough race of people. The Irish are tough. Yeah, when you grow up in climates that are very, kind of heavy and oppressive, people toughen up and they develop a strong sense of, strong sense of humor. The Scottish are funny people. And living there, so I kind of got to a point where I didn't resonate with being there anymore. And I wanted to, and, with the advent of the internet, you can now move to somewhere else and, log into your office. I still got an office back in the UK, and I log in there every day. And it's like I'm sitting at my desk in the UK, but I live in this beautiful part of the world in southern Spain. And the nice thing is people, I still see lots of friends and family because they're always keen to come out and visit it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's a very, very amazing age that we live in. Even though it's stressful and there's a lot of chaos in the world, there's so many amazing things about it that, like I said, we never had, our grandparents never had. So it's seeing the opportunities in this life.
Yeah, it's so true. And I can agree what you said about Spain. I went to Europe for the first time last year, and I went to Spain, Italy, and France, and I was in Barcelona and Ibiza, and I was really taken aback. I said, this is a really nice place. This is beautiful.
It really is amazing. And Ibiza and Barcelona are fantastic places.
Yeah.
They're friendly here. The people, because it's not so hectic and frantic, and there's a bit more space here, people they're not so career driven. You know, you don't have that career driven thing. So people have a little bit more time, and, you know, and they're much more friendly, you find here, because they've got time, and they're not driven by, you know, working 60 hours a week to pay off a mortgage, that they spend little time in the house and all that kind of thing. You know, and you get a lot of that in the south of the UK because houses are so expensive. That's really, you get it in New York. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Any big city's the same. But here in Spain, it's a little bit slower. And, you know, where I'm at in my life now, I love that. I love the slower pace and the friendliness of the people, and obviously the sunshine. And it's nice, you know, so it keeps you buoyant. It keeps you in a good mood. And I think that was, you know, when I spent time at the shamanic retreat in Panama, it was one thing that really I picked up from there, because the shaman was saying that, you know, if you feel good in the place that you live in, that's a big part of being happy and being content in life. Because if you wake up and you look out the window and it looks good, you feel good, you know, and that's it. And I've got that contrast where I lived in a place called Penge in South London, where I used to look out, and it was the top floor of this tower block in a council area. It was really rough. And every night someone would set the bins alight on the ground floor, and I'd look over and the bins would be on fire, and I'd be on the top floor. And that was where I lived back then. And so I've got that contrast. I'm living in a place like that and living where I'm at now. So every day is a blessing. You know, I look at it and I feel really grateful for living it. It's not something I'll ever take for granted.
Mm-hmm. Could you imagine when you were younger, hanging out with those colorful people, that you would be where you are now with this beautiful view in the south of Spain?
No. No. And sometimes those guys connect with me because they've seen my books in shops, or they've seen my recordings somewhere, and they get in touch with me. And I had a friend a little while ago, he got in touch, and we lived together when we were 17 in a squat in London. And I hadn't seen him for like 35 years. And he said, he got in touch with me by Facebook. He said, I can't believe what you're doing. He said, you've written books and all this. I said, wow, it's amazing. I said, yeah. And I said, so what have you been up to? And he said, well, I've just done a life stretch in prison. And
Wow.
he'd been away for, I think 25 years or something, because he was robbing banks in the 90s. He had a drug addiction, and he was robbing banks to pay for his addiction, you know, something like that. And so it was a classic case of, you know, young kids, and one went that way, one went that way. And it kind of brings it home to me. When things like that happen in my life, it brings it home to me how far along the road I've come from those dark places. And, you know, I do thank God I made some good decisions when I was younger.
Yes.
It's easy, you know, and we're all very vulnerable, you know, and there's lots of distractions in life and lots of things, you know, we have this free will to make good and bad choices at any time in our life. And that's the hard thing about this life, because, you know, it's so easy to make the wrong decision when you think you're making the right decision, but it takes you down the wrong path. And it's really, whenever, you know, having the tools of meditation and self-hypnosis, there's such a gift, because whenever I'm struggling like that, I'll go inside and I'll meditate on it, and I'll find the answer from that. And it's always so much better than trying to figure it out in my mind, you know, where it's telling me one thing then another. If you use self-hypnosis and meditation, go in and just clear your mind. You know, don't think about anything. Just drop into that state where you're really, you know, at peace and you're centered. And then just allow the solution to come to you. And it always will, you know, whether it's at that moment or whether it's a week later, it will come to you, the right answer, because, you know, you're connecting with your higher self, you know, your wisdom, your soul, your spirit. You're connecting with that, and that's guiding you. It wants to guide you in the right direction. It wants you to get through this life, you know, in a good place, in a good state. So that again, you know, the uses of self-hypnosis and meditation are so varied. There's so many things you can use it for. And really, for me, that was the ultimate transformation when I saw that guy, you know, doing stage hypnosis on the stage, getting people to do wacky things. That was the start of my complete, epiphany and transformation. And, it was, and it's something that I continue to use to this day in so many different ways.
Wow, incredible. We all get our start somehow with a spark of interest or fascination or enthusiasm for personal experience. Say, I want to do that. I just want to take the time to thank all of you for watching this video with Glenn. Wow, his story is truly amazing and I'm enjoying it so much. And I hope you are enjoying it as well. If you're enjoying the video, give us a like, give us a heart, give us a thumbs up, share it on your page, share it on your friend's page, because trust me, Glenn has some golden nuggets that he is sharing in this video, and you want to replay it over and over because there's some really powerful lessons here, really powerful ideas and powerful advice. And also let us know where you're watching from. I'm always curious to find out what part of the world, what country, what state, what city you're watching. And if you have any questions for Glenn, put them, write them in the box. I'll put them on the screen and he'll be sure to answer them for you. So we have some people that want to say hello to you, Glenn. Wendy Friesen.
Hey, Wendy.
Woohoo! Love Wendy.
We used to message each other early on in our careers back in I think it must have been the 90s, the late 90s. And I'd only just trained as a hypnotherapist. And I remember Wendy from back in the day. So nice to see you again, Wendy.
Yeah, Wendy is fantastic. And she's also speaking at our New York conference, HypnoBiz New York, as well. Love her. All my favorites are chiming in today. So this is so wonderful. 6 degrees of separation. So this is really great. So let me ask you, Glenn. So when you said that you bought your display case, right? And that's when your cassettes really took off. Take me back to that time. So you got them in the stores. Where else were you putting your tapes for the trajectory to turn upward for you?
So back in that day, it was literally, it started I was delivering the recordings into local stores. And I made about 7 titles, Deep Sleep, Complete Relaxation, Lose Weight Now, Stop Smoking, kind of all the big themes, the sort of mainstream themes. And I would drive around to local stores, a little briefcase, into the stores, and I'd persuade the store owners to take them on a £5 on sale or return. And then 2 weeks later, I'd drive back, and literally they, more often than not, they'd sell out. And they'd say, oh, there's a gentleman that's been coming, and he said he's sleeping really well since he's been using your recording. And it made me realize at the time that, I was selling locally, and if they were working with local people, then there's no reason why they couldn't work all over the country or even overseas. And again, that was a little epiphany, a little light bulb moment. And so from there, I used to phone up some of the big chain stores in the UK. And there was stores like Waterstones were the biggest, and WH Smith's. And it was quite hard to get into them. But before I'd phone them up, I would lay down on my couch and I'd do some self-hypnosis, and I'd get them to visualize them taking the recordings off me. And I'd say to myself, I'd spend all day on the phone, and I'd imagine that I'd get into like 10 stores with a box of cassettes each. And that was it. And every time I did that, every time I laid down and did those meditations and set a goal of 10 or whatever it was, I'd do it, I'd achieve it. And I'd find the people on the phone, they were getting bombarded by salespeople, but I'd always connect with somebody who had a little bit of interest in self-hypnosis, or I could chat away to. And I used my kind of self-hypnosis skills and, the persuasive techniques I'd learned in hypnotherapy in my training school to connect with people. And sure enough, that's the way it started. So then I would get them into chain stores, and they started selling well in these big chain stores. And then they'd sell out, and they say, oh, we can't order anymore because you're not on core stock. So I said, well, what's core stock? They said, well, that's got to be where you go to head office and you get a rating for each title. So then I phoned up core stock and I said, look, they're selling out. And the guy said, well, we'll look at your sales. And yeah, to cut a long story short, he came back to me and he said, yeah, he said, they're great sales. And they then graded each one of the titles. And what it meant was that every single Waterstones in the country started ordering them automatically. So as soon as one sold out, they'd reorder. So then it was like, went to another level, and I had to start employing people. then I was literally selling thousands upon thousands every week. And as I said, back then there was virtually nobody else in the UK making recordings like that, dedicated hypnosis recordings. And I struck a deal with the BBC, were a big audiobook player back then, and they came and offered me a deal because they saw my sales all over the country, and they said, but you've got to get the right insurances. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. I'll get the insurances. And I remember the first quote I ever got to get insured to sell these recordings was £25,000 off of Lloyd's of London, because
Wow.
there was no one doing it. So they had no precedent. So they gave me this sky high quote, and I went to the BBC, and they ended up picking up the tab for it. And it went from there. I started to sell them in bigger numbers and sign deals with other people. And it just had a momentum, and the momentum all came from the abundance affirmations I was doing, the inner work, and the visualization that they were going to sell all over the world. And it was an amazing journey. And I also honed them as time went on. I made, I bought, because when I very first started, I had a 50 quid microphone, very basic, and I just used to put a little bit of reverb and record them straight onto a DAT machine. But then as, the money started to come back in, I built up my studio, and, then I was going through a Neumann microphone, very expensive, and the sound got bigger. And, I really developed the art of making recordings that were much more of a production. And so that momentum took them onto another level, and that just continues through to this day.
Wow. And I think it's what's really important also that contributed to your success, that you were doing the visualizations, you were doing the affirmations, and you also took action.
Yeah, that's the key element. Yeah, visualization alone is not going to get you out there. You have to also put yourself in the marketplace. And that was it. Like I said to you, I was so hungry to change my circumstances and to make something of my life at that time. I remember my son got to an age, my oldest son, he got to an age where he started asking what I did. And I was driving a minicab in the West End at the time. And I thought, I want to tell him I'm doing something that I feel proud of. So that again was a motivating factor. I wanted it. I wanted to be able to tell my boy, look, I go to work and I help people. I wanted to tell him I was doing something good. So yeah, that whole thing of changing my circumstances was very powerful. So I put myself out in the marketplace, and I really threw myself into situations and worked hard, got out there and met a lot of people, and just took every tiny little opportunity that came along, I grabbed it with both hands, because I'd had so few opportunities when I was younger. When opportunities came along on my radar, and even now, people say to me, you work like you're broke. And I do sometimes, but it's still in me. That thing of wanting to make the most of opportunities is still there. And I think I'll never lose that. And I'm glad I won't, because, I can't let an opportunity pass by.
And I think also because you've experienced and you recognize the opposite. So you have, the benefit of knowing what it was like without the opportunities, and now knowing what it's like with the opportunities. So you embrace all the opportunities, right? It was knowing both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you have slept on park benches and I slept in the woods once when I was a kid, I had nowhere else to stay. And I remember sleeping in the woods. And, so when you've been in those dark places, part of your mind, I'm sure there's a part of your mind that fears ever going back there. And, it's all of those things that happen in my younger life are still motivating factors for me. And they continue to push me forward. And, but I kind of got more of a balance. I'm not as, now, like I said, in southern Spain, life is a bit more laid back here. So I'm not quite as driven as I was maybe 10 years ago. I'm enjoying the fruits of what I've created in life. And, and I'm happy where I'm at.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. I'm loving your story, and I'm loving all these golden nuggets. As soon as we, do this interview, I'm going to go meditate. with your recording because it's on Audible and they're on there forever, which is really great.
That's it. That's it. That's it. It's still on there now. Still, it's nice. I never speak to the guys there very often, but still get the sales come through every quarter, and it's still great.
Yeah.
So
You totally dominate Audible. You have so many tracks on Audible. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, overall now I've probably got close to 100 recordings. So I started with sort of 6 or 7 back in the day, and now, yeah, I've built it up to 100. And I kind of, if somebody asks for a certain recording and I get enough requests for something specific, then I'll make it. But I haven't made a recording for a while now. I need to do something new and fresh.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let me ask you, Glenn, right? Especially coming from your background, your beginning, what was it like for you when you made your first $1 million?
It was a really nice feeling. I tell you, one of the interesting stories that I've told a few times that was a bit of a moment, and it was when I very first started out and I got into the law of attraction, self-hypnosis. I used to visualize having a £1 million house, driving an Aston Martin, having a villa in Florida, because they were the kind of things I wanted, And as I said, the monkey mind would say, well, how are you ever going to do that? You've never earned a grand a month. How are you going to get all these things? But I worked on that, kept going, kept working through that. And then one day I was driving up to Birmingham to buy an Aston Martin. And just before I went up there, I found a picture of the Aston Martin on my computer. It suddenly popped out of nowhere that I'd used as the affirmation. And I'd visualize sitting in this Aston Martin, feeling the wheel, imagining you put your foot on the floor and it roars and it takes off. I'd done all that visualization those years before, and then I'd forgotten about it. I'd done it for a couple of years and I'd forgot. But then just as I went to buy the Aston, this picture popped out on my computer and I went, oh my God, I visualized this. I remember doing that. And then I went out, bought it, and I drove it home. And I drove it home and I was like floating on air. I thought, geez, I've got an Aston Martin. And I was the kid who was kicked out of school. And I even once drove into my school. I was just driving past it one day and I was in the Aston. I thought, I wonder what it looks like now. And my school, I had a terrible time at school. I was, like I said, I was expelled when I was 15, kicked out, worst kid they had in the school. And I drove into the school in my Aston Martin, and it's nothing I planned. I didn't want to go in and make a big statement, look at me and all that. I just was driving past and I was curious, and I went in there and it was really quiet as it happened. There was very few people in the school, but I drove in and I walked into the main hall. And I stood there and I just looked around, and all these bad memories came flooding back to me, because it was quite a tough school. It was pretty brutal back in the day. I was always, they used to cane you. I remember getting the cane in school for having flares that were too wide. And flares were those trousers you wore in the 70s, like the glam rock thing. Everyone wore flares. But if they were too wide, you get the cane. And it was literally somebody whacking your bum with a long, thin stick, and it was brutal. So all of that I went on at my school, and I stood in the school and I looked around. I thought, and these memories came back. And then I was standing there and this voice shouted out, and he went, "Oi, what are you doing?" And this guy started really telling me off for being in the school. I went, "Oh, I'm sorry. I used to go to this school years ago, and I'm just having a look around." And he really had a go at me, and he threw me out the school. And I remember thinking, well, nothing changes. Even though I'm driving an Aston Martin now, I'm still getting kicked out of school. So I obviously wasn't meant to be in that school for whatever reason. But yeah, those were little moments you have when you, change your life dramatically, and you just have this sort of then and now moment. And I'll be lying if I said I didn't enjoy those moments. But I kind of got a lot of that. I got it, when you first, like you say, you make £1 million or whatever, you have this flush of success, and you have to kind of, subjugate your ego, because, you start to get a little bit fluffed up and think you're walking on you're breathing in rarefied air. So I kind of got all that out of my system for a couple of years, and I just enjoy the journey, and I feel eternally grateful that I got myself out the hole that I was in. That for me is the biggest blessing. And also, you know, I get such amazing feedback from people that are struggling like I was, that are using the recordings and finding their way out of the woods. And that is priceless. You know, I love that so much because, you know, I got myself out of it, and now I'm able to help other people out of it. And it's the nicest feeling.
Wow, great story. Especially when you said you went to school and you got kicked out again.
I was about 35 then.
See, you're like, good. Now I don't need this school. I moved on to bigger and better things.
I didn't realize I was a good guy now, you know?
Exactly. Like, I've changed.
I wasn't the 15-year-old punk, you know?
Exactly. You're like, so you know, I've done a lot of work on myself. I'm a different person. Let me walk through the school.
That's it. I'm not going to write on your walls or, you know, smash the classroom up. You know, give me a break.
It's like, I'm vibrating at a different level, honey.
That's it. I can help you now.
Exactly. I can help you, kids. So let me ask you, Glenn, what advice do you have for hypnotherapists just starting out, or someone that wants to get in recordings? Like, what, you know, advice you would give to them?
I think it's, you know, with hypnotherapy, you know, learn as much as you can about it, and really immerse yourself in it. You know, if you want to create a career in it, absolutely immerse yourself in it. Work with, you know, friends and family. And although family for me were never the best ones to work with, you know, I always struggled hypnotizing family because they knew me as Glenn. They knew me faults and warts and all. So I always preferred working with clients. But, you know, when you first started, just immerse yourself in the whole thing. Read as many books as you can. You know, in this day and age, you know, watch as many YouTube videos as you can and immerse yourself in it. And also work on your inner self as well. Because for me, that was a really important part, because I had so much negative conditioning going on. You know, I had to clear away, and I had to kind of get my act together and become the person that, you know, become somebody who was authentic at what I was doing. You know, it's no good if you're a therapist and you're, you know, you've still got addictions or whatever going on. You know, none of us are perfect, but it's really important to work on yourself as much as you possibly can, and you know, be that person that you'd want to go and see as a therapist. So again, you know, lots of self-hypnosis, lots of healing, lots of studying, and you know, and work on your programming for success. Yeah, it's another big part of it. You know, believe that you can have a successful career in this. And, you know, you can, you know, be a force for good. So, yeah, all of those things, and you know, and enjoy the process. You know, if it's meant for you, if you're in the right place at the right time, if this is going to be your vocation, it will fall into place. You know, you have to put in the effort and the time and make the most of it. And I think for me, that was it. You know, as soon as I got into hypnotherapy and I realized that I had a knack for it and I could be good at it, that was it. The whole thing started to flow, you know, and I tried things before, you know, and I was convinced I was going to be a rock star, you know, when I was younger. That was the thing, you know, but I had a taste of that, but it never quite happened. And I put a lot of effort into it, but it wasn't quite for me. And really with all the negative conditioning I had and the place I was in back then, it probably would have killed me, that kind of fame, fortune and hedonism, because it wouldn't have forced me to do the inner work, you know, everything. And that happens to a lot of people. You know, you see it all the time with, you know, musicians, very, very gifted, sensitive people who fall by the wayside because they've, you know, everything's on a plate and very easy, and they're not forced to look inward, you know. And I think that would have been me. If I'd have taken off when I was younger, that would have been a disaster, you know. So I had to work on myself, and this amazing career that I've got forced me to do that all those years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Powerful. I truly believe that you have to affect your life from the inside out. It's not what's out there that's going to change you or change your circumstances. You have to work on yourself. Just like Glenn said, do the inner work, do the self hypnosis, reflect, right? Visualize, decide the life that you want to have, and then take massive action. So, for those that are watching, Glenn, how can they find out more information about you or purchase your audios, your downloads, your books, and things like that?
Okay, well, I've got my main website is glennharrold.com. I've got a Facebook fan page that people can join, obviously Twitter, and I've got a number of free recordings on the App Store. So that's probably the best way people can connect with me. And my biggest app is called Relax and Sleep Well, and people can download that. There's 4 free recordings in there. So there's like a mindfulness meditation, a bedtime sleep, relax and sleep well recording. So people can sample those. And, you know, the App Store is such a blessing because it's the soft sell. So that recording, people can download it, listen to the free recordings. If they like them, they then buy the paid in-app recordings for $2 or $3. And that I love that about the way to sell nowadays. So it's, you know, it's some people can try it, and if they like it, they buy it. If they don't, they, you know, move on somewhere else. So yes, it's a real blessing, the App Store. So that's the best place. Relax and Sleep Well on the App Store.
Okay, yeah. And also, you gave a free recording to those that are all watching. The link is in the bio. So definitely check that out. Tell everybody about the free download that you're also giving to everybody.
So, okay, that is the app, the recording called Relax and Sleep Well. And it's like a very gentle introduction to my work. That recording, I made it years and years ago. And it's just a nice, gentle recording that people can listen to when they go to bed at night. And it can, you know, clear their thoughts and help them to drift away. There's a body scan on there, or a body relaxation, I should say. And it's just a nice, gentle one. I use the sound effects. You know, I've always used sound effects in my recordings, because being a musician, I had a good grasp of recording techniques. So I use something where I pan affirmations from the left hemisphere to the right hemisphere and back again. So I have affirmations like, you know, you will sleep well tonight, and that will pan from the left hemisphere, and it gets and it echoes and fades away. And I use little techniques that I've developed over the years. So I try to make my recordings, you know, unique and different, and something that I'd want to listen to. And so that's the one. So Relax and Sleep Well. I'll send that over to you. And I've also got a guide to self-hypnosis that I'm going to send over. And that's where people can learn the simple technique of using self-hypnosis. And that's like a 4-page document. And it's a good introduction to self-hypnosis.
Wonderful. How many recordings would you say you have on the app, on the Relax and Sleep Well app? Or
on Relax and Sleep Well, I think there are 80 or 90 in-apps. So there's 4 free ones and 80 or 90 to choose from if you like the free ones. So I add to them all the time. So next time I get into a round of recordings, you know, I'm going to do some morning meditations. I've kind of got the feeling to do some of them, and a few other projects. I'm working on a couple of books at the moment, so they will hopefully, I'll have one out at the end of this year, and maybe one spring next year.
Wonderful. And with 80 recordings, there's something for everyone. So I highly recommend checking out the Relax and Sleep Well app on the iTunes or the Google Android as well. And I can tell you, I'm not joking with you. I found his audios on Audible over a decade ago. So the fact that we're having this great conversation is truly amazing for me, because I remember listening to it. And I know you had this British accent, but that was okay. I still allow myself to listen to it anyway. I didn't notice that at first. I said, okay. But I still listen to it. It's still on my Audible. His voice is so great. It's so soothing. I highly recommend downloading his app because it's truly, truly terrific. And I want to thank you so much, Glenn, for joining me today. The whole goal of this broadcast is for our viewers to learn, again, what has worked for other people, what they did to accumulate their success, so that way you can model it like an NLP and achieve the same success. We learned so many great things from Glenn today, as far as doing the inner work, doing self-hypnosis, taking massive action, and his story from how he started hanging out with colorful people to where he is now. So definitely replay this video, like it, give us a thumbs up, share it on your page or groups that you're in, because you will learn a lot and it will help you again to grow your practice. Definitely download his app. He also gave you a free download, so you'll see it in the bio. You can always reach out to him. He has his own Facebook group and page as well. Yes, Glenn?
That's it. Yeah. Facebook and Twitter. And yeah, that's
Reach
it.
out to him. All you need is love. He is filled with love and abundance. So definitely check him out. And for those that want to learn top business strategies, that want to come to New York City, be sure to join us at HypnoBiz New York. The information is in the bio as well. We have some amazing speakers, again, that will teach you how to grow your practice. So I can't thank you enough, Glenn, for joining me today. This was such an enlightening and inspiring interview. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Selena. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes, and we will be in touch because I want to learn more. Your story is just so inspirational, and I'm so happy. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And thank you, Glenn.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.